as Maureen said, I'm been teaching principal of a 4-teacher school in a rural area called Goresbridge in County Kilkenny for the last 6 years. And prior to this, I was teaching in the disadvantaged area of Athy, an urban area with all boys. The school I'm in now is actually a mixed school. And previously to that, in my former life, I was teaching in a mixed school in my beloved home city of Liverpool. In terms of friends, it's very important to set out that context, because in all that time that I've been teaching, I have worked with some families with very, very challenging difficulties and very different circumstances in each place. In terms of the children, there can be no doubt that whatever their background, and critically whatever their geographical location may be, they are facing mounting pressures, worries, and anxieties, be they from home, the community, their peers, their own friends, the media, and the internet. Having taught friends as part of the SPHE curriculum, I know that can actually help. The mental health of young people really is under pressure, as it perhaps is for many of us even in this audience today. It proved to be very effective in our school, and the feedback that I certainly received from both parents and children was quite incredible. And even in terms of parents, I remember doing parent-teacher meetings, having delivered the program, and it was incredible how many of them said, I've actually learned something. I've learned something about my child that I actually didn't know. I have learned that they present with different anxieties, but I've also learned about myself and my own inner self, and I would concur with that even from a personal perspective. As a school principal and a full-time teacher, I believe that the formal SPHE curriculum and the hidden curriculum both form a fundamental part of what we do as educators. The Friends programme allows for many different aspects of the formal SPHE curriculum to be taught in a very easy and non-threatening way, and teaches children fundamental life skills, particularly emotional resilience, and dealing with the everyday issues that they are facing. It reinforces the teaching and learning of coping skills. I'm okay, I'm an adult, and perhaps there is an expectation of myself personally to be able to cope with what life throws at me. However, there are times when I have found and do find life difficult, but I have learned through my experience and the example of others many of the skills necessary that I have needed to cope. I don't always, and I'm being honest. I'm resilient, and I've learnt the skills of resilience, but many people actually are not. And certainly there are many children in our society who aren't, and they're not so lucky. The programme gives the children the capacity to explore their feelings and thoughts in a safe place, and most of all, they actually enjoy it. As a teacher, I really do believe I have a duty to try and ensure that when children leave primary school, they have developed many of the different skills which the Friends programme highlights and reinforces through the different tasks and exercises. For example, giving a child a paper cup filled with water and handing them a straw and telling them to blow. And you can imagine 5th and 6th class what kind of experience that is for them. To blow bubbles. And it's one of the most useful exercises I've ever done with 5th and 6th class. And of course, needless to say, the water went in places that it shouldn't have gone, but that was a different story. And you may ask, what was the point of that? What they didn't realise, of course, was it was actually a way of teaching them, and obviously I explained this afterwards, of teaching children how to concentrate on their breathing, and therefore how to relax their own bodies and their own minds. In truth, the answer actually lies with the children. They learn and understand how their bodies react when they are under pressure. They're asked to identify their reactors in stressful situations, among other things. Another example is asking the children to identify both helpful and unhelpful thoughts, things we all actually have, through different exercises. And this allows them to find out how they see things through their own minds. They did this using a system of traffic lights with red and green denoting these thoughts. It uses practical techniques around behaviour in a very, very clever way, without actually saying it. We want our children to feel good about themselves, to feel they belong. And in my mind and from my experience, Friends can help us to identify the times, can help children, identify the times, and perhaps me too, when we don't feel we belong for whatever reason. And what we can do to change that, by thinking things through in a certain way and using our thought processing skills. I'm actually doing the program again now with 5th and 6th class, and interestingly, I'm doing it very differently, because I've learned so much, and I've learned about taking the bits out that are useful and that I can actually adapt for my own classroom situation. And they enjoy it, and they engage with it. And it's amazing to watch, and I think that's really the privilege of teaching, to watch children experience those kind of things. In my experience of using the program, the positives fundamentally outweigh the negatives. Yes, it's an Australian program, and to set it in context with references to good weather and the outdoor life is rather strange, particularly for us in an Irish context. We do love to talk about the weather, but usually it's not good weather. The training was brilliant. 3 of our staff were privileged enough to actually receive the training, which was fantastic, and our school benefited greatly. We're a very small school, but I have to say the fact that 3 of us actually went on that for that training was brilliant. As a school, we bought into it. You can sell it to a board of management. You can sell it to parents too, by actually just being upfront and acknowledging what you're doing. I thoroughly enjoy teaching the program, possibly because I passionately believe in teaching children about their emotions and how they deal with it and how they deal with feelings. However, it's not easy, and that mustn't be underestimated, I think. It's really a non-threatening program, though, which is very important to also stress. You are teaching children very, very important skills that they need. This program helps to identify what triggers are present in a stressful situation for a child, which all children will and do face. We know this as adults. We actually feel them too. There's a great deal of work in it, but I really believe it can actually be adapted. I mean, it's a very, very, I have to say, it's an extremely useful and extremely important program. In my mind, it fundamentally deals with many aspects of the SPHE curriculum in an Irish context, and I believe it's a great benefit to schools, but particularly children. As teachers, I'd say sometimes we're actually afraid of talking about feelings, because quite often we're afraid of where that can actually go, and we're not quite sure always where and what children are going to say to us. And it's a risky subject. But this program does actually allow those feelings to be spoken about in a safe and secure and non-threatening place. And I, for one, I have to say, would love to see it developed in every school, because I really do believe it can empower children to be able to talk about themselves and how they actually feel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard. And we're going to have another presentation now give us a sense of what it's like in primary school from Jennifer Byrne. And Jennifer is the principal and also a class teacher in Graiguenamanagh Boys National School. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Maureen. I have big shoes to follow now, Gerard. Thanks very much for the pressure. I'm a teaching principal in Graiguenamanagh Boys National School, as Maureen said. We're a rural disadvantaged school in County Kilkenny, and we're a senior boys school. And at present, we have 3 class teachers with 2 shared SEN teachers. I suppose over the last 6 or 7 years as principal, I've found that, and I've recognised that we've been having significant behavioural issues within the school, and anxiety levels in our pupils have been highlighted by many of the teachers that have passed through the school. And back in 2008 and 2009, we sought the advice from Elizabeth Charles in NEPS, and we brought a small group of pupils who were experiencing anxiety and behavioural issues together, along with our resource teacher, and a programme loosely based around the Friends programme was delivered for 8 weeks. And I suppose straight away the school saw the benefits of teaching these coping skills to boys and I suppose children in general at a young age. And by building their emotional resilience, we felt that the educational outcomes could only be improved. So when we heard that the Friends for Life research project was going to take place, we realised then how lucky we were going to be if we were to be offered a place. We were in the same position as Gerard's school in Goresbridge, that 3 teachers in our small school were trained at the time. The training was fantastic, and I suppose we can't commend NEPS strongly enough. I suppose it was hands-on, and we were guided through each session, and we knew it, and we were all extremely comfortable going back to our schools then to deliver each unit. I'm just going to bring you through some of the positives and maybe some of the drawbacks that we felt, and maybe then give you the context of Friends for Life now in our school. Some of the positives that we found, that we saw that all pupils and parents bought into the programme straight away, and partly I think because the teachers bought into it as well, and they saw that it was a whole school culture that was being developed within the school. Teachers were finding that pupils really looked forward to the Friends programme each week. We delivered it to 4th, 5th and 6th class in 2012, 2013, and there was 33 boys within that group. And every week we'd be meeting the boys on the corridor and, are we doing Friends this week? And for boys to feel comfortable to talk about their feelings is very unusual. One of the elements of each unit every week was that we would sit in a circle and we would discuss our happy thought of the week. And in the beginning they were, this isn't for me, I'm not going to say what's going on in my life, and I don't feel comfortable discussing the pink fluffy clouds and things, and that's the way the boys were in the beginning. But because the teachers fully engaged with it, by week 3 and week 4, everybody was comfortable giving their happy thought. And I suppose just anecdotally, I was expecting my first baby at the time when I was delivering the programme, and one of my happy thoughts one week, and I don't remember saying this, but apparently was that the baby had kicked for the first time, and I thought maybe I was going to have a football player. And last year when I returned from maternity leave, one of the boys in 6th class, the very first thing he said to me on my first day back was, "Well, miss, did you have a soccer player?" So it just proved, I suppose, that the school culture really changed within the school, and it was so positive. Another huge impact that it had is that the teachers themselves found it hugely rewarding. The 3 teachers, it definitely brought the staff closer together, so it did. And it definitely, I suppose, we found it hugely rewarding to see the boys growing in confidence since we've delivered the project. And I suppose there's lots of great initiatives out there at the moment, and not to take away from them as well, but we do think at the moment that down to Friends for Life, our boys have recently set up a student council last year. And this year, 2 of the boys who had participated in the Friends for Life programme, and they both would have had different issues themselves around anxiety and worry and maybe being victims of bullying at the time, they put themselves forward for our student council. They were elected. They went to Kilkenny about a month ago to the Corlin and Oak meeting in Kilkenny, in amongst a lot of post-primary pupils. And they stood up and they presented different things that they hadn't prepared because we didn't know what to expect at Corlin and Oak. And one of them was voted onto the Corlin and Oak Committee for South Kilkenny. So for me, to see a disadvantaged boys' school and to see the boys with that level of confidence after maybe a year or 2 of the programme, I think that's huge, really. Some of the drawbacks, and I suppose there's very few drawbacks that we saw with the programme. One of them definitely is the primary school curriculum is hugely overloaded at the moment, and every primary school teacher will say that. And I suppose with SPHE only getting between half an hour to an hour every week, it's very difficult to give this programme an hour and a half. But that being said, it's hugely beneficial, and I think if you can manage it for 10 weeks, it is a hugely worthwhile project to get involved with. And one other drawback that we found as well was that each unit is jam-packed with lots of activities, so we've had to scale it back. We're the same as Gerard, we're actually facilitating it again at the moment, and we're finding, I did unit 3 yesterday before I left school, and it took an hour and 15 minutes just to get through 2 of the activities because the boys were so engaged with discussing their feelings and with discussing what happens to the body, similar to the poster that came up on the screen a few minutes ago. What happens to the body when we're feeling anxious. So you can't take that away. You can't stop that in the middle of a session and say, no, sorry, boys, we have to go on to maths. You have to just let it run and go with it. And I think if teachers do buy into it, it's hugely beneficial. I've touched on it already, but since delivering the programme in 2012 and 2013, we decided as a whole school that we would buy into it, and every year we would facilitate the programme in some way. So we've decided as a school every second year 4th, 5th and 6th class, so 2 classrooms, will be given the programme for 10 weeks, and we will write it into our SPHE plan. And then on the alternate years, that we will identify maybe a smaller group within the school that are experiencing significant issues. And like the speakers earlier said, it's the children who are quiet, who don't present with the behavioural issues. They're the children, I suppose, that we're now watching out for. So last year we had a small group, and now this year some of those pupils are receiving it again, and they have the skills, and you can see the confidence growing in them. I suppose while our school, and I know Richard touched on this slightly, for further studies, while our school, we have no evidence to say that I suppose educational outcomes across the board have improved, but we've noted significant improvements. And I know we have our literacy and numeracy strategy, and we have our SSE plans and everything at the moment, but definitely over the past 3 to 4 years, we've noticed a significant improvement in our educational outcomes, and that can only be put down to the Friends for Life partly as well. There's a huge sense of school culture within the school now, and they belong to the school. They have an ownership of the school, and you can really see the holistic development of the child. And they're talking about their green thoughts. We had a behavioural issue last week, and I was away for 2 days, and there was a substitute teacher in, and a few things went awry in 5th and 6th class boys. And when I came in on Monday, 2 of the boys came up to me and said, "Now, miss, before we talk, you need to be thinking about your green thoughts." And I said, "All right, okay, tell me." And it's just to be able, that they have the language now. They knew that I wasn't going to be too impressed, but they had me prepared, I suppose, for what was to come. Personally, I'd like to say that we love the school. We love the Friends programme at the moment in our school, and like the Stay Safe programme, the Stay Safe programme is a compulsory element of the SPHE curriculum, and I could only see huge benefits if Friends for Life was a compulsory element, because it teaches skills that go on through life, and skills that we all need, not only the children need, but adults need as well. As Jared said, we all need a little bit of resilience, and things can get tough, but if you train your thoughts, then you can kind of manipulate situations and see it's not the end of the world if something goes wrong, and I can get through this, and I do have a support team, and I have a plan to get through it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jennifer. We're now moving from our small country schools to a large city school. So Adrienne is the principal of Kilnarden Community School, and she's going to give us, Adrienne Whelan, a taste of the experience of post-primary with Friends. Thanks,
Okay.
Adrienne.
Thank you, Maureen, and thanks all of you for staying with us this afternoon. I suppose really I'm here to talk about why, say from a management point of view, you would introduce a programme like Friends for Life. If I was honest about it, I would say that a couple of years ago, when we were being hit with DESH planning, school development planning, and we were trying to set targets for attainment and retention and progression and all of that, and at the same time we were being hit with waves of initiatives, RSE, anti-bullying, self-evaluation, the new Junior Cert programme, and probably the scariest of all was the issue of mental health. It's an awful big ask of any school and schools in general. We also had a time where we were trying to get more parents involved, but we also, as parents started to come to us and say, "Help, I really don't know what's going on with my son or my daughter." But most importantly, it was the students themselves. When you look at the pace of their lives, when you look at, young teenagers, and they seem to be permanently connected to something, and yet disconnected with stories, not sitting around the table. Going for coffee now will mean for them an internet cafe, and if they're lucky, then they're going to be sitting beside each other looking at a screen but not actually connecting. The amount of information that comes their way, where they're burdened down with choice, then everything they go to do, everything that's a big part of their lives, whether it's buying soccer jerseys or it's buying a phone, which one do I get? Which brand do I get? And then even when they decide on a brand, they have this weight and this terror of comparison. Have you got a 4 or a 4S or a 5 or a 6, or have you got the latest? No sooner than they have them. There's also kind of the issue of a negativity bias. We choose, it's much easier to hear the negative, as we all know. And I heard something recently that it takes at least 3 positive comments to counteract the 1 negative. And that's not really on our teenagers' radar at this moment in time. Their language is of blame, and it's my fault, and what do I do, and loser, and, you know, whatever. It's the disconnect. And it was after a conversation like that with Sharon from the MBSS, she was our school liaison at the time, that we were having this conversation, and she she suggested this program, and also offered it to us as a universal program, that all of our students would do it. So I suppose, again, from the how you would go about it, what it involved was, as described, the screening of the students. That wouldn't have to be done all of the time, because I'm very sure that the kind of results that came from our screening would apply to any student, any group of students in any school in any part of the country in the times we're living. So the logistics then, the timetabling, as was said, it is a double class, it needs a double class, but I think that's possible even in terms of resources, which we all know are very tight at this moment, but it is actually possible, you know, some schools, what you could do is maybe share a class or borrow a class to run in, and that can work for the 10 weeks. I think it definitely has a place in the new junior cert, if I'm allowed to mention it this week of all weeks, but it definitely has it in the short programmes. In terms of teacher allocation, I often think that for a very long time, SPHE was one of those that came later when the timetable was being done, but it's becoming more and more critical. And I think the teacher allocation in terms of personality, in terms of, you know, different people have different interests. And also, some people just love team teaching. And I know research, as you look at it, or some of the comments will show that it gave teachers an opportunity to work together and feed off each other's strength. The training was critical. The training was fantastic. I did manage to get to some of it, and it really is eye-opening. On a term-to-term basis, also, I think planning is critical for it. Again, very often, SPHE at second level it can kind of get lost, because the SPHE teachers are maybe also teaching English or history or whatever other subjects are going on at the time. But again, in the other Croke Park, the 5 hours, there is scope within that to give it the time that it deserves. Above all, I think it's the whole school climate is critical. Teachers need to be reminded. We heard this morning that, you know, if it's left to 1 or 2 people, gets parked and they're dealing with it. But in all honesty, I can say it's a programme that can only ever benefit all teachers in all subjects, because, you know, as the screening showed, it's not your obvious students. Sometimes it was the very high-flying student who looks like they are in total control, but the expectations on that student is high. The student with the learning difficulties who's not coping, you know, it's just so hard for all of them. So across the board, as you said there, it should be a universal programme. I think for so long, we've always assumed the comment, children are very resilient. You know, we see them coping with dreadful things on a day-to-day basis. We see them cope with bereavement and crime and violence and all the things you mentioned there. But on a day-to-day basis, on the normal course of events, for young children at this time, it's getting up in the morning and maybe the rows with the siblings, and their whole day is thrown out of whack, or there's a row in the schoolyard or on the way to school, or someone sent a text that has thrown them for 6. You know, it's the first years in making the transition into secondary school, where it's such a huge leap and such a huge change of lifestyle. And also then the expression we use by way nearly of encouraging them or helping them, you know, when it comes to leaving cert, you know, this is the hardest exam you'll ever do in your life. It's not from the content, it's just from the reality of this is your launching platform for life. And it's with all of those things in mind, we are trying to prepare them for a future at second level. We're preparing for them for jobs we don't even know yet, we don't know exist. So we have to do something different. We have to teach the resilience and the coping. And yes, we make mistakes, and yes, something will go wrong, and yes, we have problems. Whether our difficulties are emotional difficulties, developmental difficulties, or learning difficulties, we have to teach them a way to know, to identify how they think, how they feel, and how they react to get them through to the future. I suppose if I finish with by posing a question that I'm fairly sure the answer, you know, if you were to say to people in a couple of words, what would you want for your children? I'm fairly sure everybody says, first of all, happiness. And after that, health, I suppose, but twinned with it is the resilience, or something like resilience, coping, independence, to manage with whatever life is going to throw at them. And Friends for Life certainly covered so much of that. Finally, I would say it's something I would hope at second level to introduce at senior level, or refresher courses, because it is that worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrienne. And I'm now going to hand you over to the most resilient person in this room today.
Thank you.
Anne McCormack, teacher in Caritas College in Ballyfermot, who's waited all this time, must be thinking every green thought there is. And we are really looking forward to hearing
Thanks
what you
very
have to say,
much.
Anne. Thanks.
I'm going to stand if that's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it really is a pleasure to have waited all afternoon to speak to you, and it's great that everyone so many people have stayed, because it has been a busy but brilliant day. Yes, I have been teaching the Friends for Life programme for the last number of years in Caritas College to all our first years, and I'm really looking forward to starting our next round of Friends for Life in the new year. The children really do love it, you know, and I know that's already been said, but they look forward to it from one end of the week to the other, and if for any reason they have to miss it, they're always terribly disappointed. And I think they love it because it's different. I think they love it because it's relevant. I think they love it because it's very meaningful, and they can see that the difference these skills can make to their lives. We really do try to create a nice, warm, cosy space for the children to come into. And we usually light a candle and have a little bit of soft music playing in the background. We try to greet all of the students individually as they come through the door. And in that nice circle that somebody spoke about earlier, we notice that usually some very shy, reticent children will begin to speak out, and it's wonderful to see it. You can see their confidence inching up. You can see other children looking at them in a different way. I suppose they love it too when the teachers enter into it and give their experiences. That's wonderful. So it really is a very good bonding exercise. And I will say this, that the students we do the Friends for Life programme with, they tend to be less nasty with one another. They tend to be closer. And I think it really is a good anti-bullying prevention. And I'll come back to it at the very end, because the students themselves have told me that. They have said we're closer as a group and we're nicer to one another as a group. Another thing that I've noticed as a teacher of the Friends for Life programme is that it definitely helps the students to develop an emotional literacy. Because very often, you know, some little first years will come in and they'll say, well, I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm happy. But by the end of the 10 weeks, they really do become increasingly articulate, and they become very good at communicating and really, you know, recognising body signals and their own body signals and the body language of others. And I suppose that's something that we are all very aware of, the amount of time that young people nowadays can spend on sites like Facebook and Twitter when they're not really properly communicating. So the Friends for Life programme really does give them an insight into, you know, how to communicate, you know, the nuances of body language and intonation. And there's a few fabulous examples at the beginning of the programme. And one of my favourite it's actually in session 1, where the students are asked, they're presented with this scenario, where there's a family, none of them speak English, and they've come down because their daughter's first day. And they're standing in the hall, and they don't know where the principal's office is. And the students are asked, you know, how are these people feeling? And how could you help them? So developing empathy is a huge component of this programme. And I suppose one of my favourite definitions of empathy of all time has to be from the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, where Atticus Finch tells his son, you can never really tell how a person is feeling unless you get into their skin and walk around in it. And I think the Friends for Life programme very, very definitely develops empathy among students and listening skills and communication skills. Another thing that we do, we end every single session with a relaxation exercise. And initially some students resist a bit, they find it a bit difficult. But over time they really do. You really see them getting into this, the relaxation skills. And as part of the relaxation skills, we always ask them to go to their favourite place. Now, sometimes students do have a little bit of difficulty visualising. So the Friends for Life can actually be brilliant cross-curricular links. We always get the English teacher on board or the art teacher on board to help the children sharpen their picture of their favourite place. And perhaps one of the best stories I heard from the children, it goes like this. One child who we were in the middle of doing the programme, it was a midterm break. She'd gone off on a flight and she said on the way home there was terrible turbulence. She said the plane was bumpy. She said I was in bits. I was crying. But she said, you know what I started to do? I started to do my relaxation techniques. I started to do my breathing and I went to my favourite place. And I started to feel more in control. I started to feel calmer. Isn't that brilliant? We saw time and time again, a really funny one. Some of the other speakers were speaking about self-talk and positive self-talk and the green self-talk. One child reported one day how her mother was going to be going off to do her driving test. And the mother was saying, I'm going to fail, it'll be another 80 quid, And the child said to her, stop talking like that. You have to talk green thoughts. Tell yourself you'll be grand. Tell yourself you've done all your training. Tell yourself it's a great time of the day to go out and do your driving test and the weather is really good for you. I don't know whether she actually passed or not. But you can really see the skills that we try to teach the students in the Friends for Life programme coming out of the book and into their lives. We saw it when last year, our first group, the first group of students we did the Friends for Life programme with 3 years ago were doing their junior cert. And we could see them, as we looked through the door on that very first morning. And they were all sitting there anxious because it was a bit of a wait the first morning. And you could see them doing their relaxation exercises, breathing in and breathing out. And that other lovely session that we do with the students on their support teams, it's a beautiful session where the students are asked to identify who are the people who are there for me if I get anxious. And grandmothers, I have to say, and I don't know if there are any in the audience, but grandmothers, nannies are so big on student support network teams. But anyway, after the first exam, a student came running past me. She said, I can't stop to talk to you. She said, I've got to ring me nanny. She was on my support team. And the other thing we build in when we're teaching the coping step skills, and all of that positive self-talk, breaking down the problem, and who'll be there to support you at every stage. The other really important thing is to build in a little reward system for themselves. And another student came out of the same exam. She said to me, I'm going home now to watch 3 episodes of CSI to reward myself. It's a terrific programme. I really cannot speak highly enough for it. It really does help the students. And I'll leave you now with just 1 or 2 reflections that the students themselves made, not immediately after the programme. These are our present 4th years who would have done this programme in 1st year. And these are the sort of things they're saying 3 years later. They're saying, yes, it brought us closer as a class. I gained my class's trust. Every week I looked forward to going to the sessions. And we also learnt a lot, but we had a laugh with the teachers and students. They're also saying things like, when I was upset about something, I thought on the bright side and pushed the negative thoughts aside. Really is powerful stuff. I used my support team when I was upset because they helped me. And yes, I would recommend the programme. It helped me with the stress of tests and the junior cert. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you, Anne. And I am not going to even attempt to sum up. I'm going to thank sincerely all of our panel here on the table. And with Anne's eloquence, I think we will close the session. Thank you.